from Joshua over here with Engineers Without Borders that go into areas and when they are working on a project, and Joshua, you can correct me, that they will stay 5 years in the community, that empowering the people in really significant ways, and the projects become the people's projects. Or talking about programs in Brock that have been, so significant in working with the people right in the communities. There's a young woman here who has been working in Mahuru Bay in Kenya, where they've established a magnificent project. Where is she? There she is. Who's established a magnificent project where they're bringing water now into Mahuru Bay, but it's because they went there into the community and lived in the community, become part of the community, empowered the people mostly, and that I think this is what we have to do, and we have some great examples here. But let me ask other question, or Josh?
Thank you, Elaine. I just want to respond. So with our Engineers Without Borders approach, I think it is unique in that, we're talking kind of about community ownership. I think there's a challenge. We care very little about the ribbon cutting, and it's more about where that project is 3, 6, 10 years down the road. And I think the biggest concern for me, just hearing from Rotary, is that so many of their projects just 3 years out weren't working afterwards. And I think it breaks my heart and it breaks my colleagues' hearts when the woman's walking past that new water source that's clean and walking back to that old contaminated source. So we need to really think very hard about the failures we have in addition to the successes. I think one key point I just want to make is that there's a fundamental difference when you give it away and when people pay. And I think that for any NGO, we really need to strongly reconsider the involvement of communities and governments. It's not just the sweat equity of laying the pipe, building it as communities, or training community leaders. They don't have the capacity to know how to replace a lot of these systems. And as much as we train them, we can't do that. So I think going forward, we really need to think about, I don't know if it's tariffs, but how communities can actually pay for the clean water access that they need.
Yes?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank, I'm very happy I came today. This has been remarkably enlightening. Just take a minute. My name's Hani Farid, and my partners and I, basically a bunch of former Wall Street executives, formed this, and our mission simply is basically to identify, proliferate alternative energy, but sustainable technologies, including desalination, and I think what we're trying to do is really what we came to the conclusion, I think you mentioned, Mr. McGee mentioned, power, water. Energy and water, probably the most effective way to touch people, right, or the most essential way to touch people. Some of the things that we've come to realize very quickly that you've all identified and that Josh just brought up, are that profitability, right, because we can all, discuss it, but execution is the key. And funding, obviously, over the last couple of years, post-financial crisis, has become very scarce. Venture capital money is about a third of what it was in 2009 as it was on the peak of 2007. So bringing innovative new technology, right, to commercial scale has been an enormous burden. And we generally deal with commercially viable, right? These guys are not at the preliminary stage. They're actually past that. Funding is still being scarce. The other piece of it is ownership, right? So we tend to focus on public-private partnerships. That said, information has been very scarce, right? And there are clearly outlets. Sitting here, I'm just coming to realize just how much I wasn't aware of, right? How many organizations are sitting right around me today that I really honestly had no idea about. Establishing some sort of database or just centralizing information that people have access to. We tend to be on a commercial, scalable scale, but having someone to tie it into the community where we can really incorporate on a local level with all these things, solutions like this, and just access to information. I think, I'm a firm believer of build it and they will come, but you have to build it, right? And getting to the commercial stage, having a project end to end is absolutely essential to executing it and executing it in a sustainable way where 5, 10 years from now, it's profitable, it's viable, and the community benefits from it. I'd love to address that to all of you, really.
No comment?
We are, as part of our organization, one of the things that we're doing, recognizing some of the points that you made, is we are basically revamping our organization to be able to provide online technical support, information, documentation, case studies of technologies, information that have worked, that are working, where they're working, and making that available to our members and others. In other words, sharing the information. We recognize that the solution is global. It's no one organization, no one group is going to be able to solve these problems, but there is a lot of information out there. So one of our goals is to establish a central database, and we're in the process of doing that right now, which includes lots of technical reports, documentation of things that have worked, not as much, and even some of it academic based, but we're not over, I mean, our focus is not the academic focus, but we have a database, and we're expanding that database now to be able to address some of the issues that you raised, the sharing of information for solutions.
I couldn't agree with you more in the comments. We have a program at Hopkins, Engineers Without Borders. A couple of the students are here that are engineering plus public health to address those key issues, but also incorporating this private partnership with academics to allow this understanding. What we're having the hardest time doing is figuring out what didn't work, because people do not want to communicate that, and that's what's more important in many instances. And so we're trying, because we can step away and be independent assessment because we're not vested in the individual, and really try to disseminate this information. The problem is crosstalk, and when we talk, and now I'm talking more and more to the philanthropic side of things, it's the communication is so hard. Acronyms kill me and everyone else too. So that's the first thing, but then there's also this push forward for long-term sustainability. So I'd be happy to discuss that further too.
I would just add that there are 3 areas, I think, where when you have an integrated problem like this, people make mistakes. And integrated problems I'm fairly familiar with, since most of my career has been around health transformation and the lack of it in this country and elsewhere. The first problem is that people presume that they're starting from a point of context, that the education has been done, and that people have a basic understanding of the integrated problem and how it touches everything. They presume that that knowledge is there, at least among the people who are in the leadership. But in my experience, that's not the case. And that we underplay the need to begin understanding that we all have a basic sort of common belief of what the problem is and how it ties. For example, how water ties to energy, good and bad. How water ties to agriculture, good and bad. How water ties to the advancement of women, good and bad. This legwork has not been done. So the first issue is context. The second issue is that one of the more troubling things that we encounter is underpowered visions. That people think they've come up with a vision sufficiently powered to get ahead of the trend lines, but in general they don't. In general, what they do is whittle around at the edges of whatever is the status quo and think that they've come up with something big, transformative, and innovative, and the truth of the matter is, by the time they execute, the trend lines are even farther ahead of them, and the problem is even worse. So these visions are underpowered. And the third thing related to number 2 is the fact that absent good trend analysis on the front end, you don't know how to fully advantage technology.